Hello and welcome to Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable, where I discuss the future of this region, humongously blessed with hydrocarbon resources. Every week, we give time to reflecting on topics relevant to the development of the Niger-Delta and her people. Now, this episode is no different. I'm here once again to focus on how to take this region to a more promising future. The program is sponsored by the operator of the NNPC Renaissance the Tool Energy's Achip joint venture, Renaissance Africa Energy Company Limited, headquartered here in Port Harcourt. Thank you for joining. I'm Adedayo Yedushakin. Topic for this episode of the podcast is reading still cool? In this episode, we'll celebrate in a very special occasion, World Book and Copyright Day. World Book and Copyright Day is a celebration to promote the enjoyment of books and reading. Each year, on 23 April, celebrations take place all over the world to recognize the scope of books, a link between the past and the future, a bridge between generations and across cultures. And this year's World Book capital is Rio de Janeiro. This year's theme is particularly intriguing: the role of literature in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. We'll explore how books and stories can shape our world, influence our actions, and contribute to a better, more sustainable future. First, let's tackle a question that's been on many minds. Is reading still cool? In an age dominated by screens and digital content, where does the humble book stand? Now, stay tuned as we uncover the limitless appeal of reading and its powerful impact on our lives and society. Again, our topic on this episode of Canvas is reading still cool? And my guest is cool, Awolanye Banigo. Awolanye Banigo is an educator, public speaking coach, teacher, trainer with over a decade of experience in the public school system. A Fulbright Teacher Excellence and Achievement Fellow, she serves as president of the Fulbright TEA Alumni Association in Nigeria and curator of the Port Harcourt Book Club, promoting a thriving literary culture. A TEDx speaker, she is a passionate advocate for storytelling as a powerful tool for shaping minds and inspiring change. Glad to welcome my cool guest today, Awolanye Banigo. Lanye, great to have you on Canvas.
Thank you so much, Dayo.
It's really a pleasure to be here. I was privileged to be a speaker at the same TEDx Port Harcourt event, which is where we first met some years ago.
Uh-huh.
And I dare say, your passion, your devotion to the literary field, to literature, to education, was evident even then. So much so that when I thought about this episode and who to have to record this episode with, you came to mind, and I was certain, I don't need to consider somebody else. I found the perfect person for this. Thank you for the great work that you do and for being on the podcast to record this.
Thank you. Thank you, Dayo.
Great. So let's get started. World Book and Copyright Day. No, in the intro I read just a while ago. I mean, I read some stuff which I called from here and there. But in your estimation, what is the relevance of World Book and Copyright Day?
I think that it's a day to remind us as individuals that the book is still very important, right? It's a day to honor authors. It's a day to give readers an opportunity to go back and think of the books that they like. It's a day to honor the creative work of authors, because when we talk about the aspect of copyright, right, ensuring that their work is not bootlegged, ensuring that they get recognition and remuneration for their work. So these are the factors that the World Book and Copyright Day brings to fore. Just kind of a reminder that today is a day to celebrate authors, is a day to celebrate ideas, is a day to celebrate the written word and the people who write them and the people who read them.
I totally get the aspect of celebrating the authors and people who behind these creative works that enrich our lives. I mean, more than most people, I'm appreciative of that. I mean, I am the product of books. However, the copyright part of it, is that such a big deal,
Well, um,
or
I'm
is
not
this? Yeah, go ahead,
so
please.
I'm not a publisher, but
Mm,
just speaking from the aspect of a reader, right?
mm,
Um, you hear a lot of people, authors say that they don't make money from their books. And it is important to highlight the issue of copyright so that people actually get remuneration from their books.
mm.
Because when books are pirated, the authors do not get paid for it. They don't get the income that comes from their book. So personally, running a book club, I ensure that we get books from the publishers or the author themselves. So that's one way I am ensuring that authors actually get money or get rewarded for their work.
Mm.
And if everybody will just make that same commitment to say, you know what, I'm not going to buy a book that is pirated. I'm not going to buy a book that is bootlegged. I'm going to buy from authentic sources. Then we can curb issues that have to do with copyright.
I totally agree with you, and I think as an adult now, and I've been an adult for some time, I'm like-minded. I would only buy original material, nothing bootlegged or faked for that matter. However, um, I dare say, I think there are two components here. Number one, there's the economic factor for the people who have to buy these books, and then there is government as well, because government has a responsibility to ensure that materials uh, are not um, are not faked, or creative content are not bootlegged,
Mhm,
of
mhm,
whatever kind, whether
mhm,
it's
mhm, mhm.
literature or other uh,
Art.
works of art. Exactly. Um, and quite honestly, I must say, even as a child growing up, because at some point we had an economic downturn, a very serious one, and my dad couldn't cope with the pressures, mom as well. And when it was time to buy some literature books for school, I remember getting some books. Even as a child, when I saw them, I knew this was not the right thing.
Mhm.
Because I knew how the ones my colleagues in school were, it looked. This ones looked photocopied. And
Exactly.
quite frankly, I felt bad because my own book looked different from the others, and the others could tell mine was different as well. So I
Exactly.
felt bad as a child, but then again, my parents couldn't afford the real thing, and that's why my dad resorted to that. Of course, Dad, I love you. Um, they start, the economic side of it, and then government as well not doing enough to ensure that um, books that are illegally produced don't make it to the market as well. What are your thoughts on that? Those
Okay,
two
so
components.
yeah, let me speak to the economic factor first.
Mm,
Um, there's something to be done for that. There's a second-hand book market, right, where you can actually buy authentic pre-owned books that have been previously owned. You can buy a copy there, and it's authentic, it's original,
mm,
right?
mm.
Um, you don't have to read photocopied books because those books, as a matter of fact, you don't get to see clearly. They don't even make the efforts to produce them properly.
Some are
The
produced properly. Just say,
You would know.
I would know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyways, I feel like you could actually buy secondhand copies. There's also the place of borrowing books. Now, this is where libraries come in, and libraries are important
Mm,
so that for situations where you cannot afford to buy the books, you can go to a library, register with a library, and borrow the books. Unfortunately, we don't have that luxury in this part, but this is the importance of having libraries around.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then to the other part about the government, I think there's actually 2 days ago or 3 days ago, I was at an event for I think proprietors, owners of schools, NAPS. I can't say for sure now what the acronym means, but I was a speaker at that event, and the event was co-hosted by the West African Book Publishers, and there we were made aware that they have a team of people who go around to check schools and bookstores for fake copies of books. So I think that there's something being done in that regard, even though it is not widely spread, I would think, because I
Mm.
was hearing it for the first time. 2 days ago. Yeah.
But is this still a? I mean, pardon that I seem to be, remaining on this topic matter. But is the issue of what's it? Is it copywriting books or what's pirating books?
Pirates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this still a very huge problem as it possibly was when I was a child, when I was much younger?
Um. So I'm not quite sure, and this may be because I'm in a bubble. Like I said earlier, that I particularly buy books from publishers. I order books. I'm a huge fan of audiobooks. I am attached to Audible and other libraries, other digital libraries. So it's not something I'm very aware of, right? So I can't speak to that because I'm not very aware of it. Yeah.
If I were to hazard a guess, I would say I think it still is because the issue of piracy in Nigeria has been a long running cancer. I'm not sure that even though some effort has been made, I'm
But
not sure we got rid of that cancer because, like I inferred a while ago, if you consider what happens in the other creative space, the movie industry, the music industry, they still have a lot of piracy going on, I think.
No, so I would say with books, maybe it's not as bad as it used to be. Now, this is me just hazarding a guess. And the reason I would say that is because we have more Nigerian publishers, we have more authors in Nigeria. So it's not coming from all the way anymore. It's not, before now we read a lot of foreign books. And because to access those foreign books, they come in dollars, they're expensive. So we have the pirated copies here. But now we have a lot of authors, indigenous and authors writing, and the books are accessible. So I don't think it is that big of a deal. Piracy is that big of a deal. I'm sure that obviously there will still be books that are pirated. Maybe the foreign books, because now that I think of it, I still see them in traffic. But so yeah.
This year's World Book Capital is Rio de Janeiro. What's the significance of a World Book Capital, really, and Rio de Janeiro in particular?
So when a city is named the World Book Capital, it basically says that the literature and the culture of that city is going to be highlighted for the next 1 year, because a lot of authors, literary enthusiasts get to visit the city because of the festivals and all of the things that are going to go on for that 1 year. So Rio de Janeiro being the World Book Capital for the year is going to see a lot of literary activity coming up from that city. There are going to be a lot of author visits, festivals, culture, and all of the things that they can infuse into that 1 year. UNESCO activities, book festivals, like I said before, and maybe any other artsy stuff that they can infuse, showcase their culture, their food, their music. So it's an opportunity for that city to get its people reading. Now, since there are going to be a lot of literary activities, pockets of events everywhere, it's like a campaign for that city to say, we are the World Book Capital. You need to read books. So there'll be visitation to schools, just a lot of literary activity. That's what it is. For the city, it helps them to highlight their culture and their authors. If they have local authors there, they get to do events, visit schools, hold seminars, hold talks, hold readings, book readings, and stuff like that. Yes.
Now, besides it being a tourism windfall for that city, I mean, from what you described, I mean, Rio de Janeiro is going to be experiencing an influx of visitors
Yes.
from other parts of the world.
Yeah.
So hotels will do good, cafes will
exactly.
do good, all of those will do good.
Yeah.
What does it do? And yeah, their schools will do good, the children, students, kids, hopefully. What does that do for the rest of the world? And I'm going to add to that question. In 2014, oh wait, let's finish with this. What does that do for the rest of the world? I'll come to my next question after.
It puts a spotlight on Rio de Janeiro, right? Especially for readers. You want to know, if it were a city that you don't know anything about before, you want to find out about the city. So it makes that city popular, more popular, because I believe that Rio de Janeiro is a popular city. So it makes that city more popular, brings it to the spotlight, and it makes people, you want to read. If you are someone who has never read a book by someone from Brazil, you want to read a book by a Brazilian. If it just draws attention, draws the world's attention to that city. Everybody kind of like beams in on what's going on there. So
Yeah.
that's part of what it does.
Yeah. I can't remember if I've ever read a book by a Brazilian. So maybe that's
I
something I
have.
should consider.
I think Paulo Ferreira, I can't pronounce his name properly.
Okay.
He wrote a very poignant book for educators, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, a
Okay.
book that basically highlights how you teach people with the understanding that oppressed people understand things a different way, and then the democratization of education. That's the central idea of that book.
Yeah. All right.
It's a very fantastic book. He's an education philosopher, amazing writer. You should look him up.
Oh, I trust the judgment of that. Are you planning a trip to Rio de Janeiro?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh, well, maybe it's too early to say no. You never can
Well,
tell.
okay, well,
Anything
a lot of
could
things can happen. Anything can happen. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, to the question I was going to ask earlier, in 2014, Port Harcourt was the World Book capital here in our darling River State, in the Niger-Delta, South Nigeria. What was the implication of that for Port Harcourt, for River State, for the Niger-Delta, for Nigeria as a whole?
So like I said, about a city being picked as a World Book capital, ideally, it brings the attention of the world to the city. Now, I don't know if I can say that we achieved the full potential of that in Port Harcourt. And the reason is because we don't see any lingering benefits from that. Although, like you mentioned when you were introducing me, you said I'm the curator of the Port Harcourt Book Club. Now, the Port Harcourt Book Club started in 2024 and in 2014 as a fallout from that event, the World Book Capital event, right? We actually started in April. So these are some of the things that were gained or achieved from Port Harcourt being the World Book capital. People got reading. People got to find out about young authors in Port Harcourt, indigenous Port Harcourt authors, and
Yeah.
it brought a lot of people to Rivers State. It brought a lot of authors to River State, literary enthusiasts to River State. People who had never been to Port Harcourt got to know about the city, and yeah, they renovated libraries. They did some literary events. I think a book club was actually in charge of that event, or was the focal point for that event, the Rainbow Book Club. Until today, they still organize book festivals in Port Harcourt, even though it is not as, they are not huge events that we would hope to, when a city has been the World Book capital, you expect a really big event to hold yearly just to back that up. Even though the events are not as big as we would like them to be, these events hold every year. They call book clubs together and they hold a book festival. So yeah.
So, borrowing your expression, lingering, even though we've not had the lingering consequence that we would desire from being designated World Book Capital as far back as 2014, we have had some things that came about. We've got the Port Harcourt Book Club, we've got this other Rainbow Book Club you mentioned. What, in your estimation, has been responsible for that, for us not tapping into the full potentials that hosting a huge event of that nature could have had on River State and even by extension, possibly the rest of Nigeria?
To be honest with you, I don't think it is any one thing. Um, and I can't really say for sure. To be honest, because is it probably the people? Because at this point, I'm just wondering. It's not something that I've thought about. It's not something that I have considered. But now that you say it, I'm wondering, is it that the people who hosted the event did not, make it as big a deal as it should have been? I can't really say why.
How about government? We
I
like to bring government
no,
into
I don't.
everything.
That's
Would
the
this be
thing. I
apt?
don't
Or would
like.
this be apt an apt time to bring
No,
government
that's the
into?
thing. I don't like bringing, especially when you talk about literature. Literature is an individual. It's mostly about the individual, right? Yes, there should be there can be government support in a way, but it shouldn't really be about government. for instance, we have the Ake Festival that happens every year in Lagos. Ake Festival is such a big deal, right? People coming from all over the world to attend the Ake Festival. I would expect something like that in Port Harcourt. So I would think that maybe it's a lack of collaboration of the literary enthusiasts, authors and readers, booksellers, just the book ecosystem in
Yeah.
River State, not coming together to create something that should be more lasting.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt there's a lot that individuals or private organizations or associations can do, but building a reading culture, a lot can be, yeah, some of it starts from the home. In my experience as a child, it started from the home. But I think there's a lot of influence that schools wield as well with functional libraries. I don't know if there's any state school in River State that has a functional library, for example. I don't know. And my money is on it doesn't exist.
Okay, so I'm a teacher, and I've taught in two schools. The first school has a library, but the library is not one that we can present anywhere.
No, I don't doubt that structures exist
So no,
with
no, no,
with a, do I call it a tag or some sign
no.
saying library, or is it
So
functional?
no. So but then there are books, and people actually go there. Now with the second school, there's no library at all. There's a reading room with no books. So, to be fair, some schools have them. They are not what they ought to be, but they have them, while others do not. Yeah.
All right. Has reading remained popular with the rise of digital media and digital content everywhere? I guess what I'm asking also goes to the topic of this
It's reading
podcast.
is cool.
Is reading still cool?
Reading is still very, very cool. So,
Because you find it cool?
no. I think reading is still very cool. Reading has been able to adapt itself to different forms, right? Earlier when we were talking, I talked about the fact that I like audiobooks. Audiobooks before now were not a thing. So um, now, if you don't like the physical copy of a book, you can listen to books on the go. There are ebooks if you're someone who's, you're really focused on technology and you don't want to hear the crinkle of a book. You have an ebook to follow, to carry around. And then we have book talks. That's TikTok. You have a designated session for book reviews, introducing new books. The same thing with Bookstagram, which is, pictures of books, reigning books, popular books, books in the top 10. And then there are book events all the time. So most authors are gradually becoming superstars, right? Because when they come into a city, you find people coming for book signing, they hold book events, book parties. So I think that reading is still very cool. Yeah.
Why would anyone not want to hold an actual book and flip the pages and hear that
The crinkle of the book.
exactly? And then when you have to rush to go do something, get something or put a pen in between there and drop it and come back to it. Why would anyone not want to do that?
So, you know that people are different. Education psychologists will tell you that we learn in three ways, right? We have auditory learners, we have visual learners, we have tactile learners or kinesthetic learners. That is auditory, obviously speaking to sound, visual to the eyes, and then kinesthetic, physical. So these book forms generally speaks to those ways of learning. If you're someone who likes listening, you have audiobooks. If you're someone who you're more visual, you have ebooks. And if you need to physically feel the book and all of that, then there are actual paper copies for you. So I think that generally in everything we do, we try to adapt to people's individual needs and wants. So everybody's not going to like a physical book. Some people are dissuaded from reading just because of the physical book. But with audiobooks, personally, I like physical books. I like the crinkle of, I like the smell of new books. I like the crinkle of a book. But these days, I find that because of my schedule, I am more into audiobooks because I can do it and do something else. It allows me to just listen while I'm physically doing something else.
Now, the theme for this year's World Book and Copyright Day, there's a nexus between literature and SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. How does or how can literature help achieve these SDGs? What's the connection?
Well, so obviously, writers write books, develop content that help us think about the SDGs. For instance, when you talk about SDG 4, which is education, right? Books are essential to any kind of education you want to have. It develops critical thinking, develops empathy, ability to innovate, right? When you talk about the SDG that has to do with equality, I think that's SDG 3, if I'm not mistaken. There are books that help you, that write, that there are writers or authors that write about equality, write about themes on equality that help you to zoom in and actually see how this plays out. Because these are not things that ordinarily, maybe these are not things that you've encountered, maybe these are not things that you've thought about because of your culture, because of your environment, but written from a different perspective, you begin to see how this can be problematic, how these issues can be problematic. So authors help us to feel empathy, help us to realize, have a different perspective of the issues that we ordinarily wouldn't have looked at. And that is the same thing for the SDGs. You have books that talk about climate change, eco-friendly activities and usage, and people respond to those books in ways that they would ordinarily not respond to regular teaching or news information.
It is Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable, brought to you by Renaissance Africa Energy Company Limited. Still getting used to that. And for this episode, we're discussing, is reading still cool in commemoration of World Book Copyright Day? We go for a break, return in a moment. The conversation will continue. Please stay with us.
In the heart of our journey, where the sun touches the earth and the wind whispers through the trees, a new chapter unfolds. A chapter where energy illuminates more than just bulbs. It lights up minds. A chapter of unity, a coming together with a common goal to energize futures and illuminating lives. In classrooms, young dreams evolve, inspired by the promise of a brighter tomorrow fueled by available energy. Small businesses flourish, becoming seeds of prosperity. Energy that empowers and is catalyst for growth and change. The future is energy. So, let's light up the path to a sustainable future together. Energy for you, me, and the world at large. Energy for people and planet. We are Renaissance.
Welcome back. Still Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable, brought to you by Renaissance Africa Energy Company Limited. I'm Dio. My guest is very cool, actually. Awolanye Banigo, you're welcome back. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Dayo.
And on this episode of Canvas, we're discussing, is reading still cool in commemoration of World Book and Copyright Day? A deeper understanding of global issues is, I find to be a challenge these days with a lot of people. No offense to them, especially the younger folk, Gen Z. And I fear for those who are even coming after them, really. Can books help with that? Can literature help with that? Help people have a deeper understanding of how the environment works and even how the rest of the world works? And how does literature achieve that? And if I have some concern right now, if literature can do that, Why is it not doing it?
Okay, so I think the whole idea of books is transporting us to places where we've never been. So it speaks directly to the question of helping people understand global issues, right? Um, and books are doing that. For instance, the Chimamanda's latest book talks about um, a woman, Kadiatu, which she was on the news sometime about a rape that happened in a hotel. Now, this is something that I didn't pay attention to at the time because it happened in the US and the individual was from France and whatever. So I didn't pay attention to it. But reading the book now, I'm very interested in it and I want to find out, and that book highlighted something about the US that I didn't know. It talks about in America, justice is framed as who gets awarded the biggest compensation. Now, that is something that I'm interested in, and I want to look into it because it gives me a different narrative of what justice is, right? In my opinion, before now, is justice should be something that, if you do something, you should get the commensurate punishment for what you've done.
Someone goes to jail.
Exactly. But now, reading that book and having this perception tells me that, okay, this might not be the case with the US. And I'm interested in the justice system in the US now, just because of that. So, this is how reading helps you understand global issues. I'm in Nigeria. I'm trying to understand what is happening in the US because of this book that I have read. There are several other books that help us to, or piques our interest with what is happening in other parts of the world, which ordinarily we wouldn't be interested in because these are not things that are localized or happening in our areas. Yeah, so that's how books help us. It transports us. It helps us to travel, right? It helps us to see the world even when we have not left our couches. You're able to see the world, understand what is going on. For instance, you can ask a little boy or a little girl in secondary school in Nigeria that has not even left Port Harcourt before, and they'll be able to tell you that, oh, in America, this is how children behave. Children are allowed to go out 18 years. You cannot be stopping children from doing this and that. And that is a global issue, right? It's talking about maturity, adulthood. It helps students to understand or children to understand how things are different, how things happen differently in other places. So it's an existential issue, which is actually very global. So, yeah.
Are books failing? And I asked that, with respect to the response you just gave. Now, I have no doubt as well that books are still helping a lot of people understand how the world works and have a better understanding of how things work in other parts of the world. As you mentioned, books transport you to places you've never been to and possibly might even never be to. And you somehow get an understanding of how the culture works and how the people think
Yeah.
in those places. But in spite of that, or in spite of the book's ability to do this, I don't think never ever in the history of humanity have we been as divided as we are today. And you have a lot less empathy even today than you have before. People, it appears, are not as supportive of each other or different ideologies or perspectives. I think as possibly we had in days of yore or in times past, the divisions in the world are so widespread and the rent is becoming larger and wider, it appears. In spite of books' ability to actually bring us closer, it appears that its here is getting even wider now. So, have books failed? And do books really have the capacity to, borrow your expression again, to make us empathize more and build a more sustainable future? And if they can, why does it appear that the reality is the exact opposite of that?
Dio, you're putting too much pressure on the book. Everything does not begin and end with the book. People have, there are other factors that come into play besides books, right? Yes, I agree that the society is way more polarized today than it used to be. But then we can also say that it is this is a result of people being able to express their individual thoughts as opposed to people just following a particular thought leader, right? Before now, people would just follow because this person said this. Let us all follow what this person said. But these days, people are able to express what they think. People are able to write, or authors are able to write from different perspectives, right? There are certain topics or concepts that were not allowed before. But today, people are able to write those concepts, put those things in their book, and people are able to read them and also express themselves. So we can't just say that the failing of society is a failing of the book, because the person, the human being, is not made up of just what he reads. There are other factors that contribute to making who a person is, and these will all come to play when the person is expressing themselves. So I don't think that books are failing. Books are doing what they ought to do, enlightening people. Now, when we speak to the type of enlightenment, now that's a different conversation. What type of enlightenment are books given? And then you cannot also control what type of enlightenment, because books should be written for the book should be written for the book's sake, right? It shouldn't. Every book is not meant to teach. Every book is not meant to direct. Every book is not meant to entertain. Books are there for different purposes, and every book is addressing its own purpose, right? You cannot control or gatekeep how a book should be.
So the divisions and the polarizations are good?
They are not good. I'm just saying that we cannot blame it on the book. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that we are experiencing a time when people are more able to speak their opinions, although some people might disagree with this and say that people are more led. But I feel that people are more able to speak their opinions without, trying to conform to any one way of thinking. People are now speaking their minds. The problem I see is that people are not able to say, okay, even though you disagree with me, let us still try to coexist. Now, there's a sharp divide with, if you don't agree with me, then stay this way, let me stay this way. That's the actual problem I see. I don't think that the problem is with people having different opinions and, different perceptions of life. The problem I see is that people are not able to coexist within their different perceptions and opinions. That's where I think the problem actually lies.
Now we have, digital technologies is rife these days. Almost everything that we do these days has some digital component to it. People, and including myself, by the way, Google everything. And we consume a lot of what we consume on the screens of our mobile devices or other devices at homes or the office and all of that. These digital methods of consuming literature these days, does it in any way impact the effectiveness? Because I'm sure that on whatever level, some reading still takes place. I mean, no matter how, and I say this, conservatively, no matter how dull a student is, there is still some reading that takes place. At least you still have to read some schoolwork, no matter how much limited time you give to even reading the school material. You do some reading, but and I meet a lot of young people, and at the danger of sounding too critical, overly critical. There are not a lot of smart ones amongst them, I think, or there's a disturbing large number of not so smart ones amongst them, in my estimation. These digital methods of consuming literature these days, does it reduce the effectiveness?
Well, so it depends on how this person is consuming it. So you know that the fast pace of technology these days, the everybody's so busy, everybody's so on the go, right? So we have this 15 minutes tidbits sizes of information that people consume, which as a result they don't have depth, they don't understand the premise and all of that.
There's no context.
Yeah. So conversations are not nuanced. You just pick it and you go. Now that is one way to look at it. But then we already talked about audiobooks. Audiobook is a form of digitalization, right? And if you're listening to audiobooks, you get the same information you get in the physical book. If you're listening to, or if you're reading ebooks, you get the same information you get in the physical book. I think the question is, how do we make reading attractive? That is in-depth reading, deep reading, not just surface level reading or consuming Instagram posts, 15 minutes or 20 minutes, 20 seconds or 30 seconds Instagram posts. How do we make reading, deep reading, attractive to young people? And one of the ways that we can do that is to make reading fun. Create parties, or young people are into parties. They are into content creation. They are into, how can we do this? Can we hold reading parties? Can we hold festivals where books are read? How do we organize things like that to make it cool, to make it how do I put it, funky, hip, and because the truth of the matter is, this is what they like, and you have to adapt it to fit to what they like. Because if the in thing today is TikTok, so the average young adult is going to consume whatever they are consuming from TikTok. They get their news from TikTok. They get their stories from TikTok. Everything they get is from TikTok. So how are we going to adapt books, content of books, to fit into TikTok stories, or TikTok, what they call them now? TikTok.
I don't know. I'm not on TikTok. I'm not proud to say, but I'm not.
No. I don't think it's a thing of pride. I'm not on TikTok either, but I'm just saying, how do we? Because when you look, I know I mentioned book talk, but those are just bite sizes. So how do you? Because we're talking about context, nuance, and all of those deep stuff. How do we get that into TikTok? I think these are the areas that we need to explore. Because, like you mentioned, although they are young people are very smart, very creative, but to agree with you, most of their conversation actually lack substance, and this is a result of, it kind of like shows the gap that we're talking about.
No, I don't think TikTok is designed for anything deep, really. I'm sorry. However, you mentioned reading parties, and I'm wondering, how exactly are those supposed to go, reading parties? And let me answer that. Is there a strain of attention deficit disorder that is spreading around the world, where people can't just maintain focus for longer than this 10, 20, 5 minutes duration?
The world is really fast-paced now. Everything is, so I feel like most people feel sitting down to read, because you need to devote some hours to reading, right? If you want to read. I mentioned I'm an avid reader myself. I love to read, but I just told you that these days I'm gradually moving towards audiobook because of the way that my life is moving right now, right? So I don't have as much time that I usually had to sit down and read the book. So I listen to it on the go. So that's just the reality of society at the moment. So we have to look for a way to adapt and encourage people to maybe go to audiobooks, maybe move to e-books, right? So that they can keep up with the time. Now, when you talk about book parties are parties where, for instance, I've held a book party before. You invite people to the house, they come with books, the books that they like, their favorite books or books that they would like to read. Everybody comes, you have small chops or snacks, and then at a designated time, when everybody comes in, they have a conversation, introduce themselves, tell us, oh, I came with this book. This is the book I want to read. This is the book I want to read. And then a bell goes. Everybody faces their book for like an hour. Then there's a pause again. Everybody comes back to have a conversation, gist. The bell goes again. Everybody goes into their corner to to continue reading. And just that goes for the number of hours you want to have it for. And then at the end of the day, everybody just talks about, what they read so far. So it's just a gathering of people who love books, want to read together. So that's what the book party is.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
that's one way to have a book party.
Never
yeah.
been to one of those.
Yeah. It's not very common. I saw it, I read about it, and then I decided to have one. So I've had one, and it was good.
It would be
Yeah.
interesting to hear what somebody who was reading a copy of an edition of Meals and Bones or Silhouette Desire would have to say
Yeah.
about what's going on in their book. In such a gathering.
Yeah.
Would that be allowed?
Of course. It's I think that, you don't, like I said, you don't police what people read as long as they are reading.
Okay, that's fine.
Because you'll be shocked to find out what a person can find out from the most mundane or inconsequential book, right? New perceptions that you didn't expect.
What are some of the biggest challenges being faced by the literary community now, especially with sustainability, of the manufacture and the consumption of the materials in whatever form?
I think one of the biggest challenges that the book community faces is that what it,
Yeah, the literary community.
okay,
Yeah.
so the literary community faces time first, for instance, which is something that we've talked about now. The fact that a lot of people are on the go. Everybody's, especially in Nigeria, everybody's more concerned about making money, and people, books right now are very expensive, and people would rather do something else with their money than invest it in a book, especially if it's a fiction, a fiction book. Like, how does this help me? I'm really thinking about how to eat. So, why should I spend my money buying a book? And then on the part of the authors, there's also I think there's also the pressure to write what people will like, as opposed to what you really want to write, right? So you hear sometimes people talking about an author playing to a certain audience. This book is not written for Nigerians, or this book is written for this group of people. This book is written for this group of people. So there is also that the pressure to write what you feel people will like, so that your books will be bought. Because if you write what people will not like, there's a tendency that nobody's going to buy the book. You talk about the book forever and nobody's going to buy it. And although we might want to think that book buying is not the central reason why an author writes a book, but it is a major reason why anybody would write. So I think those are some of the challenges that the literary society faces at the moment.
How can readers support the authors and initiatives that focus on sustainability through their reading choices?
Yeah. So I think that the ways that readers can support authors, is basically just to buy their books. Now, if an author writes a book and it's a good book, I don't think that people should worry about whether this author has an agenda, or this author doesn't have an agenda. If you think the author is a good author, the book is well written, I think you should read it. I think you should buy it and you should read it, right? Personally, at the Port Harcourt Book Club, we read all types of books. We read books that we dedicate certain months to certain types of books. For instance, we dedicate certain months to books that talk about equality. We dedicate certain months to books that talk about justice, strong institutions, right? So creating time to read specific type of books allows the community to read different genres of books that talk about the SDGs, for instance. Saying, for instance, that a certain month is World Climate Change Month. So for that purpose, let's read books on climate change. That will encourage authors to know that, okay, people will read my book regardless of what the topic is. So buying books, regardless of what the topic is, will help the authors to know that people will read my book, whatever I write. But if people don't read it, then they'll think twice about writing a book in a certain genre. Like, I don't want to be cancelled. I don't want people to say this or that about my book, and as such, not read it. So yeah.
It's interesting you use the word cancel, because I was going to ask you next about the cancel culture, which didn't exist some years or even a few decades ago. But it's a very rife thing now, where people are cancelled, not necessarily even because of what they've written in a book, but because of other opinions
Or
they've
their
experienced
opinions,
in
yeah.
the different fora entirely. I mean, one example that comes to mind now is the global icon, J.K. Rowling. And there were
Yeah.
attempts at canceling her a while ago because of thoughts or opinions she expressed regarding gender. Uh, how does that impact? How does that play in all of this cancel culture? You have this mob mentality. It's almost like people are just waiting for who do we cancel next.
Yeah. I feel like, so generally when we look at people in society, they don't have, they are not able to influence decisions. They are not at the helm of power, right? Usually decisions are made for them. Now we tend to have social media, which has somehow shifted the power balance. And people have seen that, okay, you know what? I can say something and get a couple of people behind me, and we can do something about that. And people are taking advantage of that. I think it is good and it is bad. It is good in the sense that it gives opinion leaders an idea that there are consequences for holding certain opinions. And if when those opinions are really bad, then I think cancel culture kind of like helps to make people not say certain things in public, helps them to hold back. However, it also stifles free speech. It also stifles people expressing themselves genuinely, because they wonder, if I say this, will I get cancelled? Will my work get cancelled? Which is where I draw the line, because I believe that the artist or the author should be separated from his work, right? I feel that, especially when it is fiction, or especially when it is creative, like painting or music or whatever, I feel that if you like a music, if you like a song, you like a book, you should read it regardless of what the person who wrote it is saying. That's their personal opinion. That's not what. Now, when you read a book, you draw your own conclusions, you draw your own opinion. They are not trying to influence, even if they are trying to influence you by, because there's no way an author will write without his personal opinions filtering into the book, right? But then you have a mind of your own. This is where critical thinking comes in. You should be able to think and draw your own conclusions on what you're reading. So I feel that cancel culture is dicey, good and bad, in my opinion, because sometimes it has done some good, especially when in situations where you feel like, if I keep supporting this person's work, it gives them the financial stability to keep doing what they are doing. So in that case, cancel culture comes in really handy. However, when it tries to stifle free speech, that's where I have a problem with it.
Mm. You are a curator. We're wrapping this up shortly. You're a curator of the Port Harcourt Book Club. Am I right?
Yes.
So, what is the club about, and how do you admit members? Is it open to the public?
Yeah, so the Port Harcourt Book Club is just a community for people who love books, like to read, who think reading is cool, right? To just hang out together, read books, have conversations about the books they've read, look at the different themes that are discussed in the book, and or in a particular book, and how those themes affect society. We are open to everybody. Just we want people who are open-minded, who are able to accept divergent views, knowing that people are different, not coming with a closed mind. Or even if you come with a closed mind, we are hoping that you allow yourself to see that there are different opinions. So we're not a closed organization. We're open. We allow everybody coming, because our intention and our hope is that people will come in and they will read. We just want to create a community where people feel safe to read and have conversations about the books that they've read.
Does the Port Harcourt Book Club have the event lined up for World Book and Copyright Day?
So generally, every year for World Book and Copyright Day, we just discuss on our platform. We just discuss the books that have impacted us, and then we encourage members to gift out books to people who they know that would ordinarily not read. So gift a book to someone. Think of a very interesting, funny, quirky book that would make that one person read and gift them the book to encourage reading. So that's what we do. And that's what we're looking to do this year again.
All right. Hopefully I can visit sometime.
We would love to have you.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Canvas the Niger-Delta Roundtable. Thank you for joining us. We discussed, is reading cool? Is it still cool? In commemoration of World Book and Copyright Day, April 23 this year. Thanks to my very cool guest, Awolanye Banigo. It's been a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much, Dayo. It was a pleasure having this conversation with you.
Read a book. Trust me, it makes all the difference. Thank you for joining us. Fresh edition comes your way some other time. Check out our platforms and ensure you consume what we have here as well. And this podcast brought to you by Renaissance Africa Energy Company Limited. I remember. Have a nice day.